Professor Joseph Magnet, what can we say? He is one of the top lawyers, constitutional, like Warren said, constitutional lawyers. But to us, he's known by Mad'ahaba, meaning the father of constitution. So Mad'ahaba, we are really grateful for your time again. It's, what can I say? It's a great pleasure having you again, and this to speak to the FR people everywhere. Mike, floor is yours. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for those warm words of introduction. Thank you so much, my dear friend Warren Kreitz, for those very kind words. Thank you to everyone for participating in this conference. It's a great honor and privilege for me to share with you some thoughts about contested futures in Eritrea and Ethiopia. And I want to extend a particularly warm welcome to my Afar friends around the world. I know how much suffering you have endured since we last gathered. I offer my condolences to those who have lost loved ones. I want to assure you that I am with you, that I will stay with you, and that I will continue urgently to press your case before international tribunals and political authorities seeking justice for your cause in these extremely challenging times. Let's talk about an overarching view of the political formations in the Horn, in Eritrea, and in Ethiopia. Modern Ethiopia and modern Eritrea are founded on sharply contrasting constitutional ideas. Ethiopia's 1994 constitution is inspired by what was and is an extremely novel idea: ethnic federalism. This is a constitutional system that distributes power to the nations and the nationalities of the state. Unlike the United States Constitution, which begins, "We, the people of the United States of America," the Ethiopian Constitution begins, "We, the nations, nationalities, and people of Ethiopia," and goes on immediately to proclaim the commitment of these nations and nationalities to their right of self-determination. In theory, unlike most other constitutional systems, Ethiopia's ethnic federalism distributes power to each nation of the state, sufficient for that nation to control its own affairs and future. In other words, for the nations and nationalities to self-govern. This idea produced very impressive economic results since Ethiopia's revolutionary movement took over the war-ravaged, starving population of Ethiopia in 1990. Since that time, real GDP per capita more than doubled approximately every 10 years. Ethiopia experienced the highest rate of growth in Africa before the present civil war. Ethiopia's economy not only expanded, it diversified away from natural resource extraction. Modern Eritrea is founded on an opposite concept: extreme centralization. This developed in the EPLF revolutionary cadre and became the central organizational idea of the PFDJ government when the revolutionary movement took power in Asmara. It has intensified dramatically under the autocratic one-man rule of Isaias Afwerki. To call Isaias's governance model centralized is an understatement. Eritrea does not have an institutional or legal framework. The highly centralized 1997 constitution has never been implemented. There is no national assembly to adopt laws, no system of properly administered independent courts. The police, internal security, and military are controlled by the president and regularly detain arbitrarily and disappear large numbers of citizens. We heard about this happening just today. There's no independent media and no civic or political space for opposition. Isaias hired Bereket Habte Selassie, an American law professor, to produce a constitution for Eritrea in 1994. Selassie was responsible to the PFDJ. The constitution he produced, the 1997 constitution, embodied the EPLF, PFDJ ideas. The fundamental inspiration of these ideas and of the constitution he produced is a strong, centralized, unitary state, the opposite of Ethiopia. Some points about that constitution. Selassie's constitution has no decentralizing mechanisms. The central government is not meant to share power with the nations and nationalities of Eritrea. It provides no guarantees for ethnic autonomy. Unlike almost every other diverse country in the modern world, Selassie's constitution does not have a chapter on minority rights. Like the EPLF, like the PFDJ, Selassie's constitution not only refuses to accommodate ethnicity and diversity, it actively intends to subdue it. As Professor Selassie wrote in his 2011 book about the Constitution, the Eritrean Constitution is designed by all means and policies to subdue and neutralize ethnic identities. Under this model, Eritrea has not been able to develop. It has a tiny GDP. 50% of its population live below the poverty line. It has experienced negative growth in most years. The World Bank considers its debt burden to be unsustainable. While Ethiopia's federal system produced impressive economic results for a generation, the benefits of this were highly skewed in favor of the dominant Tigrayan ethnicity and its ruling party, the TPLF. The TPLF delivered a disproportionate share of the growing economy to ethnic Tigrayans. This is a very unstable mix because it layers higher and lower economic status over language and ethnicity, a mix that history teaches is combustible and unstable. And this proved true in Ethiopia as well, which experienced in 2016 an explosion that removed the TPLF from power. In 2019, the new PM, Abiy Ahmed, went some distance to contract Ethiopia's ethnic federal model by creating a new political party. The Prosperity Party incorporated all of the predecessor ethnic-based parties except the TPLF, moved these predecessor parties away from their ethnic nationalist and pro-ethnic federalism past into a party that promotes a unified Ethiopian national identity and a non-ethnicity based federalism. The TPLF was left out, creating animosity and, as we all know, escalating into the present military conflict between the federal government and Tigray regional states. The results have been catastrophic by any measure. Contraction of the economy, friction with neighbors, more than 100,000 deaths, outrageous atrocities and massacres. This has been a blunder of epic proportions. The civil war in Ethiopia produced dramatic consequences for Afar people located in the three countries of the Horn, and also for Afar in the diaspora. A secret deal between Prime Minister Abiy and President Isaias resulted in Eritrea committing dozens of Eritrean military divisions to Ethiopia to wreak havoc on Tigray. As reported by Sei Abraha Hagos, the former defense minister of Ethiopia, the ultimate objective of the Abiy-Isaias agreement was to dismember and partition Tigray into three pieces, with the south and west of Tigray incorporated into Amhara regional state, the northern part of Tigray from the Eritrean border to the Adigrat highway to remain under the control of Eritrea, and the remaining portion left for an administration installed by Abiy. Control of land is essential in subsistence agricultural societies such as Ethiopia and Eritrea, and there are clear territorial issues at play in this war. Among the Amhara political elite, the war is seen as an effort to regain territories lost in the 1991 division of nationalities. The Amhara militia and special forces, accordingly, have been pivotal to the military campaign against Tigray. While the Amhara work in coordination with the Eritrean military, the Amharas and the Eritreans have very different objectives. In contrast to Amhara territorial ambitions, Isaias's objective is grandiose. He wants to use what was a strong Ethiopian economy to fuel his ambition to lead a regional alliance of autocrats in the Horn of Africa, based on a dictatorial model of governance imposed by his security apparatus and army. The Abiy-Isaias plan failed on the battlefield, at least so far, but not before producing huge loss of life, massive displacement, atrocities, and the spillover of the conflict into other Ethiopian regions, including Afar regional state. Ethiopia's once strong economy is in tatters, with negative growth and contraction characterizing the Abiy-Isaias alliance. Eritrea is under United States sanctions, expanded just this past March 2022 because of Eritrea's military involvement in Ethiopia and its involvement in atrocities and massacres, as well as other human rights abuses. Sanctions have also been imposed on Ethiopia, with more dramatic USA legislation extending the punishment now in progress. Eritrea is a pariah state in the international community. Ethiopia is flirting with that status itself and may soon find its room to maneuver internationally sharply curtailed. The spillover of the Tigray War into Ethiopia's Afar region displaced approximately 300,000 Afar people. Massacres and atrocities claimed the lives of tens of thousands of Afar. This little girl is one of the lucky ones. Unlike tens of thousands of other innocent Afar, she is still alive. Ahmed and I became personally involved in this conflict last month. The Eritrean military ordered a contingent of 500 Afar soldiers to cross the Eritrean-Ethiopian border and attack Tigray. This is an illegal order. Many of the soldiers did not want to obey. 54 deserted. They made their way across the border into Ethiopia. As asylum seekers, they were entitled to Ethiopia's protection. As deserters, of course, they had a well-founded fear of persecution, which entitled them to refugee status. What happened? Well, they should have been safe in Ethiopia. High-ranking officers and soldiers from Eritrea, using helicopters, pursued them into Ethiopia and kidnapped 36 of the asylum seekers. Those 36 were refooled back into Eritrea, where presumably they will be tortured and murdered. The 18 remaining in Ethiopia were told, "We are going to come back and get you." The two governments are acting as one now, Eritrea and Ethiopia, is what the general said. You come with us now, or we will come back and get you. Ahmed and I, using our contacts with high officials in United Nations entities, using credibility that we've built up over the last 12 years, we intervened on behalf of the remaining 18. We convinced UNHCR officials to reach out to them immediately on a priority basis, give them food, water, shelter, money. We managed to find them a reasonably secure home under the protection of the UNHCR in Asaita, where hopefully they will be safe under the watchful eyes of the UNHCR. This is a picture of some of the boys in front of an Ethiopian security office just before the UNHCR moved them to Asaita. Refouling the 36, murdering the 36, is one of many war crimes that General Karakari has committed, as well as other Eritrean military associated with him. It's a general problem because Eritrea has repeatedly moved against Eritrean refugees inside of refugee camps in Ethiopia. The UNHCR reported on armed men entering the Barali refugee camp in Afar Regional State in February 2022, killing men, kidnapping women. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights in Eritrea, in his report last month, noted that violent attacks on the destruction of camps, generalized insecurity, and dire humanitarian situation have forced Eritrean refugees into Tigray and Afar regions to flee. And he also described how Eritrean forces entered the camps, the refugee camps in Ethiopia, where they singled out perceived members of the Eritrean opposition, kidnapped dozens of individuals, and took them back to Eritrea. They have been forcibly disappeared since. You know, we will move against General Karakari and other criminals in the international tribunals. We will seek to hold them to account for these crimes. He may feel safe today, protected by his soldiers. But he and the others need to worry about tomorrow. The soldiers who protect him today, they were on another side yesterday. And we can expect that they will be on another side again tomorrow. Any sense of security that criminals like these have is a false sense of security. People who do these things will be called to account for them, and we will not rest until they have accounted for them. Looking at the future, Isaias has specifically targeted Ethiopia's ethnic constitution as a dangerous precedent. He says it institutionalizes ethnicity and cannot be good for Ethiopia. The problem, he said, is not only an Ethiopian problem, but it also characterizes Somalia, Libya, and Iraq, which he says share similar problems with Ethiopia. Isaias claims that it opens the way for foreign intervention and affects the stability of the Horn. He gave this interview in which he specifically targeted Ethiopia's ethnic constitution as dangerous. He let out his frustration in this interview with Abiy. It's necessary, Isaias said, for the long-term stability of the Horn that Abiy does away with the ethnic constitution. If you want to know where the pressure is coming on Abiy to create different structures than the 1994 Constitution, this is where it's coming from. In Isaias's words, ethnic federalism has to be removed. This is also more or less in line with his geostrategic ambitions. He's seeking a new alliance with China and provides details on projects planned with China in various industries. Yes, he's under USA sanctions, and he doesn't expect these to be removed. He's content, rather, to follow a Chinese model and to be part of the Chinese-led geostrategic alliance. Professor Selassie, the Constitution drafter handpicked by Isaias, has since become a dissident. And he's reflected a little bit on the Constitution that he drafted for Isaias. He's been somewhat open to the criticism that his Constitution is overly centralized, not responsive to the Eritrean reality, especially critical to these criticisms of the 97 Constitution is its attack on ethnicity, something of great importance, obviously, to the Afar. Its denial of autonomy to the nations and nationalities, again, critical to the Afar. Its confiscation of all indigenous lands, making them state lands to be sold for profit to the center. Again, something directly experienced by the Afar, with large tracts of Afar land being sold to Indian farming corporations and others, Australian potash. He has also been somewhat open to the failure of the 97 Constitution to accommodate Eritrea's diverse languages, cultures, and way of life. And I have had this out with him in personal discussions, and he did agree that the existing unitary constitution, which he drafted, was defective in some of these respects, but in particular, generally, it did not find the right place for Afar and other minorities. In his 2019 book, Focus on the Eritrean Constitution, and in other places, Professor Selassie recommends that the 97 Constitution be brought into effect so that Eritrea can have a democratic rule of law facade, and that its defects should be modified subsequently. Bring it into effect and then modify it. I respectfully believe that this is a recipe for disaster for the Afar and other small minorities in Eritrea. History teaches us that the moment of transition is everything. What's decided at the moment of transition, in virtually all cases, sticks. And this will be especially true if the 1997 Constitution is brought into effect in the moment of transition. Why? Because its amending formula is excessively rigid. No small minority, no combination of small minorities will ever succeed in using the amendment formula to change it. It could only be changed by violent means. It does not give a fair shake to minorities. It does not give a fair shake to the Afar, and the Afar would not be successful in modifying it subsequently. Study of comparative politics shows that deep autonomy for interior nations promotes stability in diverse states. Not only is deep autonomy for interior nations a path to stability, it is the only path to stability in deeply diverse societies. Ethnic federalism has produced prosperity, freedom, wealth, and the good life for many troubled societies. It's especially successful in states like Canada and Belgium. I think what needs to happen at the moment of transition, however it arises in Eritrea, is to discard the 97 Constitution and to begin again. What constitutional principles would we write on this chart for a new Eritrean constitution? Rule of law, democracy, the equality of each nationality. And then I think we should be specific. Each nationality shall exercise rights of self-government and self-determination in a federated autonomous region. Each nationality should have the right to own and control their lands and resources.
Professor Magnet, you're back up a little bit. You muted a little bit, and go ahead and unmute. Unmute your mic. There. Now
Yes,
you can
Professor
hear you.
Mac.
Go ahead and start again from the Constitution.
That was me. I tried to mute the
Oh, I
background
see.
noise and that's it.
Okay, apologies.
Colleagues, please. Where did we lose it? On this slide, or
No, you're perfectly fine. You were describing we the people and what steps to be taken, and you said the specific rights of nationalities, and I think that's as far as I follow you.
Democracy, rule of law. Thank you.
Yeah, you did say that. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me add a few more things, and apologies for it's so interesting.
Oh, it's from our
living in
side.
a technical age.
Sorry about
It was me who I was trying to mute some background noises and I ended up muting you, so I apologize for that. But
Yeah. So rule of law democracy, the equality of each nationality, nationalities having the right to self-govern and self-determination, nationalities to have the right to own and control their lands and resources, nationalities to have the right to preserve and protect the vitality of their languages, culture, way of life, and economy, and the rights of indigenous minorities, of which I consider the Afar to be one, to be guaranteed and protected. I think we need to learn from the past failures in ethnic federalism in Ethiopia, which allowed a minority nationality to dominate. I think that was done through the political party mechanisms with the ERPDF. And so I would recommend that we control also the status of political parties, protect the right of political opposition. Let me sum all this up by saying that my three basic recommendations is that the right constitutional model for Eritrea, but also Ethiopia, is a model that has and provides deep autonomy for the interior nations of both countries. I tend to favor ethnic federalism, but I recognize there are other forms through which deep autonomy could be provided, number one. Because ethnic federalism, autonomy, is hotly disputed in both countries, recommendation number two is that the small nationalities, particularly the Afar, will have to be very good at making alliances and partnerships. They, do not have the strength to do it on their own, and they need to consider very carefully who their partners will be. I find it very interesting that the TPLF, having been driven from power, will probably want the same thing, and the Afar will have to consider carefully their relations with the TDF, particularly as it's large, has power, battlefield successes, and guns. Thirdly, the 1997 Constitution should be considered a dead letter. These calls to implement it and then fix up its problems, this is a chimera. This leads down a road, I believe, to disaster. Colleagues, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be able to share with you and to discuss with you. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you again. It's a privilege to share my thoughts with you.